Alright, so this is my setup. This is the electrical panel. It's a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that's got a polyethylene coating on it. And as you can see, I've got these nifty little power strips that have switches next to each outlet, so I can manually turn pieces of equipment on and off very quickly. And everything's labeled. Nice and neat. These two are on there with double-sided adhesive tape. This one is attached with screws because it keeps peeling off. The tape is a bitch to get off, so I'm going to wait until it loses its adhesion on these two before I replace it with screws, which will hold long term. These timers, unfortunately, do not have any screw holes in the back, and any adhesive tape I tried to use eventually wore out over time. So what I did is I screwed into the board these cable, I'm not sure what they're called. They're basically a round piece of plastic you screw into the exterior of a home to run cable through to keep it in place. And then I use these Velcro straps between them to secure them in place. And this timer runs the circulation pumps, and this timer runs the refugium lights. So the refugium lights are on from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. The circulation pumps will turn off between 9:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. For feeding time. And what else do we got on here? This is a timer used for the dosing pump. I believe it's currently set to be off from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. and it's on the rest of the day. And this controller down here is for my DC return pump, and you say I got it on 50% power right now. And then this is the UPS. It is massively oversized for what I'm using it for. I believe it's 750 VA, and as you can see from this kilowatt meter, it's currently running at around 53.7 to 53.8 watts. And that is basically powering everything on this right power strip. That's what's plugged in there. I do eventually have to move this onto the board there to prevent water from dripping into it, but I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. I've got about 10 things on the to-do list for this tank right now. This trash can is a cheap 32-gallon, you can see it there, multi-purpose trash can from the hardware store, and that's kind of acting as my sump. And this is a protein skimmer that I have running in it. It's a CPR, I think it's an SR2 or an SR3, something like that. It's a Venturi-based protein skimming design, and you can see I have pieces of egg crate there to stabilize it. Underneath the egg crate is live rock all the way down to the bottom, and you can see this thing is filled about 80% of the way up. And so there's quite a lot of live rock in there. There's the DC return pump is way down in there at the bottom and pumps up through this line here, which is 3/4 inch. It is clear PVC and it's nylon braid reinforced. And as far as the water coming into the trash can is concerned, I have a filter sock holder here. You can hear the street behind me. With a 4-inch filter sock that filters the water before it comes in here, and that's coming out of a bulkhead joint from the aquarium above it. And this second one here, I was originally going to use this to run an algae turf scraper, but I ended up deciding it against it, so right now it's kind of like a backup drain in case the primary drain gets clogged, which is always good. And you can see this 3/4 inch tubing runs up the back. Let's see if I can get in here. It's kind of a tight squeeze. And it runs to here. And then it goes to hard PVC. And I have a check valve here. And it runs ooh, it's a tight squeeze, up through this bulkhead joint into the display tank. I am eventually gonna move this so that it's straight out this way instead of coming up around the back, which makes it more leak prone and puts more tension on the tubing. The reason it's a little bit wet is not because it's leaking, it's just because the air around this area is extremely humid because you have these water-filled tanks right underneath it and that are circulating water. So that's just natural condensation. And you can see I have unions everywhere so that I can break this apart easily. If you ever build one yourself, do yourself a favor and do that, or it'll make your life a living hell. This is the display tank itself. You can see my little fish right in there. I don't know what the hell he is. I'm thinking a blue stripe grunt simply because that's the only fish I've been able to find online that looks anything like him. But he stopped growing and he's, I don't know, 5, maybe 6 inches long. So that's way too small, and his snout is a little bit different, so I'm not really totally sure on that. But I caught him up in Boynton Beach, so yeah, no pet store to ID him. And there's one of my urchins there. Cannot remember what species he is. I think that's nah, I can't remember. Underneath him you can see a pencil urchin. It's kind of hard to see because this unfortunately his phone is catching a lot of the reflections. Human eyes are better at filtering that out. And there's a third one, you can kind of sort of see him there right in the back. And he is a long spine urchin. And I actually got him as a hitchhiker on one of the rocks. And you can see there's some Aiptasia in the tank I gotta get rid of, but they haven't really bothered the coral, so I've just kind of left them in there for now. And then this is a piece of Pukani dry rock from the Pacific Ocean that I got from BRS, which I actually took the original piece of rock, which I think was around 12 pounds, and I chiseled it in half, and it's still too big for this tank. So eventually I'm going to have to haul it out of there and chisel it in half again, or maybe even a quarter. As far as corals go, there's a green Stylophora up here. And this is a brain coral. It's a blue-green favite. In the back there we have a hammer coral. And this is a Duncan. And that's my Monipora digitata in the back there with a branching structure. And then this is a fun little guy in the middle there. That's a bird's nest coral. Yeah, they give these things really weird unscientific names, but what can you expect from the community? In the back is a green Galaxia. In front of him is a Pagoda Cup. And then this is a Monipora capricornus. And then I have circulation pumps here. There's one down there in the back. I can't really get it very well. You can barely see it. That creates an upwards current in this direction, clockwise, across the back of the tank. This one is mainly there to provide surface agitation, keep that water moving, but it also creates a current this way across the front. And then this circulation pump here creates a downward current. So together they create a counterclockwise current in the front here. And then you can see this little thing I made out of egg crate and PVC and zip ties to hold the coral up. And then I essentially devised a PVC splitter for the intake. That's the return line coming in there. And then on the other side, I really didn't know what the fuck I was doing when I designed this. I'm definitely going to eventually break this tank down and redesign this, but this is the drain system. You can see I went a little bit overboard with the 4 different drain lines in there. That bottom one is so that I can easily drain the entire tank if I ever need to move it. And the top ones there are basically... This front one is the one that's actually being used, and the other 2 are just backup drains in case the primary gets clogged. But I've never had to use them, and I think this tank has been up and running this way for I want to say a year or something like that. And there's a power filter in the back. It's an Aqua Clear 20. That's running activated carbon and a sponge. This is my automatic fish feeder. It is an Eheim, I don't remember the model number. And the food that I'm using is... if I can get in here. I desperately need to clean up this patio, as you can see. New Life Spectrum marine formula. I just go on Amazon and get the top-rated stuff. And this is the digital thermometer. You can see right now it's at 78.6, according to this thing. Actually surprisingly accurate. I've taken 2 lab-grade mercury-based thermometers to calibrate it, and it seems to be accurate. And I have a chiller here that maintains the temperature, because this thing is actually outside, and I have been very impressed with this thing. It's around like 96 degrees out here, and look at that, it's water temperature's 78, 79, hovers around there with the chiller running almost 24/7. Although it probably shuts off at night, I wouldn't know since I'm sleeping. And let's see what else to go over. There's a float switch in here. What this will do is this will shut off the return pump. It's hooked up to a relay that is in turn hooked to the return pump. When the water level gets too high, actually the water level is a little bit low here, so let me show you how I adjust that real quick. The drains each have these ball valves on them that I can use to adjust the flow through them. And they also have a hole I drilled in the top with an airline valve. And I can adjust the airflow through the pipe as well. As the water flows down the pipe, it creates a vacuum pressure that sucks in air. And by adjusting the amount of air that can get in, you can change the air to water ratio, which changes the amount of water that gets through because there's a limited volume. So if I want to increase flow through the drain, I would close this by turning it clockwise, and if I wanted to decrease it, I could turn it counterclockwise to open it. And we can see the water level is actually a little bit low, so I'm going to turn it a little bit counterclockwise, and then it'll take a few minutes to adjust to its new level. And you can see I have some magnetic cleaners here in the front. What else? These magnetic frag racks are holding up these corals in the front, and also that hammer in the back, and the Monipora digitata in the back there. I have a few kind of neglected corals down here. The yellow scroll, and then yellow polyps in the back that you can barely see. Lots of snails in here. Lots of microfauna. You can see some coralline algae, spaghetti worms, calcareous annelid worms. I can't really capture very well with this camera. There's lots of tiny critters on the glass. Isopods, amphipods, copepods, all kinds of calcareous tube worms, and of course Aiptasia. So, yeah. What else? So the water flows down the drain from the display tank, and it's gonna be hard for me to get a good angle right there. It flows through this filter sock, which you can see is almost full right now. That's a 4-inch filter sock holder. Goes down to this aquarium, where it drains down through another filter sock into the trash can, and then gets pumped back up through that line to the display tank. I also have a few more pumps in this mid-level aquarium. You can see there's one in the back that runs up through here, this line, and this runs through a canister full of bio pellets. That's a biodegradable plastic. And then up here into this refugium, which is full of macroalgae, mainly Caulerpa, and some red mangroves that are growing there. under this red and blue LED hydroponic light, which is extremely bright, but again, the phone's not going to be able to properly capture that. And this is literally just a storage bin that I filled with sand and water, and I've sealed off any holes for the clip-on lid with epoxy, and I plumbed it with a uni-seal in the back for the drain. Let's see if I can get that. And then that goes down here and trickles down through this pipe, and this is just a piece of pipe with small holes drilled in it, and down into this aquarium that's currently empty, which spills over through this bulkhead seal into this, back into this aquarium. And that runs through another filter sock that I have some Purigen in that I need to clean out. So then there's another pump in here. You can't really see it, but it's in there. It runs through this line, again 3/4 inch PVC nylon braided tubing, to the chiller, and that gets pumped back in to that same aquarium. So there are 3 different loops in the plumbing. There's the main loop that goes from the display tank down to the mid tank, down to the trash can, then back up to the display tank. Then there's the refugium loop that goes from the mid tank to the refugium, down to the second mid tank, back into the primary mid tank. And then there's the chiller line that runs from the mid tank to the chiller, back to the mid tank. I also have coming into here to replace the evaporated water. You can see how crazy I am. This 20-gallon trash can is full of lime water that I make myself, and that's actually a air stone at the bottom that's designed to filter out the larger particles. And it's hooked up to an airline tube that runs, again, I need to clean that up. Up here, I have a secondary filter here filled with basically a sponge, and that runs up to this peristaltic pump, which is actually creating the pressure that pulls it up, and it drips down through that little clip-on airline tube holder there into this mid tank. And you can see that white discoloration on the glass. That's calcium carbonate building up where it drips, and you can see my little water level indicators in there. And this here I don't even use anymore. This is my old setup where I used to dose calcium chloride and sodium carbonate instead of calcium hydroxide, which is what I use currently. And forgive the background noise, but this phone's microphone is very, very good at picking it up for whatever reason. It actually sounds louder in the recording than it is here, much louder. Let's see, what else do I have here? There's a fan up here just to keep me cool when I'm working out here. There are 2 heaters that are in this mid tank. They only get turned on for a few weeks during the winter at nighttime when it actually gets cold. The display light actually has a built-in timer that is controllable over Wi-Fi. I'll go into that in a minute. And then, of course, the timers for the circulation pumps. I showed you 3 of them. Only 2 of them are actually hooked up to this, though. The third one is, the one in the back, is on all the time. And the refugium lights, you can see one of them I have unhooked right now, but the one that's active is that one up there. And then this third power strip is the filter pump, the chiller pump, the air pump, the float switch, which runs to the DC pump through a relay, and that third circulation pump I mentioned. And the air pump is down here, and that's to feed these buckets over here, which I use to make the salt water for water changes. And going back to this light here, the holder I have up here is made out of PVC pipe, and the whole support structure is a steel shelving rack used for warehouse storage that I got on the cheap. And then I cut out these wood boards for each layer to keep everything stable and to distribute the weight. And if we take a look at this light for the display tank, it's three 3-watt royal blue LEDs in the middle, and then the LEDs on the side are actually cob chips. They're 76 watts, I believe, each, and they're a mixture of mostly blue, royal blue, and white LEDs, which can be dimmed individually through the settings. And it's currently set to run from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And the way I have it set is the brightness slowly ramps up through the day, peaks, and then slowly ramps back down until it gets to 0 at around 11 or 12 at night. And that's most of my setup. I still have a few more things I need to get done. Eventually, this 55-gallon tank that's neglected and was being used by my sister to house lizards is eventually going to replace this 20 long that I'm using right now. And that's going to be a bitch to get that out of there. But it's going to give me an opportunity to set up a proper tank with a surface skimmer with an overflow box to replace this bizarre drain system I concocted hastily. And I'm also going to put a light in this tank and use this as a temporary housing tank to move everything in this tank into while I do that switch. And I'm going to have to move these mangroves over to this other shelving rack, which I'm currently using for storage. What else? I'm going to have float switches eventually for pretty much everything, so that nothing can possibly overflow. And that is about it. At least that's everything I can think of for now. I'm sure there's more. I haven't looked at my to-do list in a while. But yeah, this is my setup. And then that's a bunch of crap I gotta go through on the bottom shelf there.